The reviews are in for Donald Trump's latest move, his latest vendetta case in the courts, and they are brutal. Even from notable MAGA corners and MAGA-friendly legal eagles. If you care about free speech in America, what I'm about to tell you should send chills down your spine. Donald Trump's Justice Department just indicted the former director of the FBI, James Comey, for the second time, and this time the alleged crime is posting a picture of seashells on a beach. And here is the part that should really get your attention. It's not just Democrats who are outraged. Some of Trump's most loyal defenders, people who have gone to bat for him for years, are publicly saying this indictment is unconstitutional, absurd, and completely fabricated. Stick around because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why even Trump's own allies are turning on him over this case and what it means for every single American who values the right to speak freely. Now, before we go any further, let me ground this in real verifiable facts because credibility matters. On April 28, 2026, a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned a two-count indictment against James Comey. The charges stem from an Instagram post Comey made back in May of 2025, showing seashells on a beach arranged to spell out the numbers 8647. Trump is the 47th president, and the term 86 in restaurant slang means to get rid of something or refuse service. The administration claims it was a threat to assassinate the president. Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University and a Fox News legal analyst who actually testified on behalf of Donald Trump during the 2019 impeachment hearings, wrote an opinion piece on Fox News calling the indictment, and I want you to hear this carefully, facially unconstitutional. Meanwhile, Andrew McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor and contributor to the conservative National Review, wrote that if it is possible, this indictment is even more absurd than the previous one. He said the first indictment failed to state a crime and this one fabricates a crime. These are not liberal commentators. These are people from Trump's own corner of the legal and media world. The sources backing everything I'm telling you today will be linked in the description below. So here is what you are going to learn in this video. First, the full story of what James Comey actually posted and why the government is calling a beach photo a felony. Second, why 5 previous attorneys, general and acting attorneys general, refused to bring these charges, but Todd Blanche finally did. Third, the Supreme Court precedent from 1969 that legal scholars say makes this case dead on arrival. Fourth, what Comey's own legal team is doing to fight back and the strategy that already worked once. Fifth, why Trump's approval ratings are at historic lows and how this indictment is making things worse for Republicans heading into the midterms. And sixth, the real question no one is asking out loud, are the people running the Justice Department right now acting like they ever plan to leave power? If you are someone who cares about free speech, about the rule of law, about the future of American democracy, hit that like button right now and let us know you are watching. Drop a comment telling us where you are watching from and whether you think a picture of seashells should be a federal crime. Every comment helps this video reach more people who need to hear the truth. Let us start with the seashells themselves, because when you hear the full story, you will understand just how thin this case really is. On May 15, 2025, James Comey posted a photograph on Instagram. It showed shells on a North Carolina beach arranged in a pattern that read 8647. His caption read, quote, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." That's it. That was the post. Now immediately, Trump allies pounced. Then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced the Secret Service would investigate what she called a call for the assassination of the president. National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard said Comey should be put behind bars. But here's what happened next, and most people do not know this part. Comey took the post down the very same day. He wrote publicly that he assumed the shells represented a political message and that it never occurred to him that anyone would associate those numbers with violence. He said he opposes violence of any kind. He then voluntarily sat for an hours-long interview with Secret Service agents in Washington, D.C. The Secret Service investigated and they dropped it. They dropped it because there was no credible threat. So why, nearly a year later, is the Justice Department treating this as a felony? And that brings us to the man at the center of all of this, and I promise you, what I am about to reveal about Todd Blanche will change how you see everything that is happening right now. But first, let us talk about why the legal experts are so confident this case will fail. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution protects free speech, including speech that is ugly, provocative, and even hateful. The only exception when it comes to threats is something called a true threat. The Supreme Court defined this in the 1969 case Watts v. United States. In that case, an 18-year-old anti-war protester said, and this is far more explicit than anything Comey posted, "If they ever make me carry a rifle, the first man I want to get in my sights is the president." The Supreme Court ruled that was not a true threat. It was political hyperbole protected by the First Amendment. In the more recent 2023 case Counterman versus Colorado, the court further clarified that a true threat must be a serious expression conveying that a speaker means to commit an act of unlawful violence. Jonathan Turley pointed directly to these cases when he explained why the Comey indictment cannot survive. He wrote that the First Amendment is designed to protect unpopular speech. Popular speech rarely needs protection. It also protects bad and hateful speech. He even acknowledged that Comey's post was crude and adolescent, but he said Comey has a right to write out any thoughts that come to him on his walks on the beach. Now, here is where it gets really interesting, and this is the part most people are completely missing. Donald Trump has wanted to prosecute James Comey for 9 years. The New York Times first reported back in 2017 that White House counsel Don McGahn stopped Trump from ordering the Justice Department to prosecute both Hillary Clinton and James Comey. Since then, Trump has tried to get at least 5 different people in charge of the Justice Department to go after Comey. Jeff Sessions would not do it. Bill Barr would not do it. The acting attorney general at the end of the first term would not do it. Pam Bondi, who Trump appointed as attorney general in this term, apparently was not aggressive enough about it, and Trump fired her. But Todd Blanche? Todd Blanche said yes. So who is Todd Blanche? He is currently the acting attorney general of the United States. Before that, he was Donald Trump's personal defense lawyer during the criminal trials in New York. Former Department of Justice pardon attorney Liz Oyer, who worked inside the Justice Department, said something on national television this week that stopped me in my tracks. She said Todd Blanche has demonstrated that his #1 priority is to prosecute Donald Trump's political enemies, and he will go to any length under the sun to accomplish that, even if it means blatantly ignoring the legal requirements. She went even further and said that Blanche openly misstates the law and provides misinformation about how the justice system works in furtherance of his political objectives. Have you ever wondered why the acting attorney general of the United States would knowingly bring a case that virtually every legal expert says will fail? Why would he risk his professional reputation on charges that Jonathan Turley calls unconstitutional and Andrew McCarthy calls fabricated? Liz Oyer's answer was blunt. She said he is totally focused on power and essentially drunk with power. She compared the current situation in the Justice Department to giving dangerous actors access to the most powerful law enforcement tools in the country. She described it as a betrayal of the integrity of the justice system. And this is not just about Comey. This week, the Justice Department also announced charges against the Southern Poverty Law Center. Multiple former DOJ officials have noted that Blanche misrepresents what the grand jury process involves and what the legal standards actually are. He stands at a podium and says things that are simply not true about how the law works, and he does it on camera in front of the American people. But here is where things take a truly alarming turn, and I want you to really think about what I am about to say. Ben Rhodes, who served as Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, offered a theory this week about why some of Trump's closest allies are starting to break away from him. He pointed to the polling. Trump's approval rating has dropped to 34% in the latest Reuters Ipsos survey. The AP NORC poll has him at 33%. The Silver Bulletin average has his net approval at -18.8, which is the lowest of his second term and roughly equivalent to where he stood after January 6th. Only 22% of voters approve of his handling of the cost of living. Gas prices have climbed above $4 a gallon amid the conflict with Iran. Rhodes said that people on the right are beginning to look past Donald Trump. They are starting to realize that the sun is setting on his political dominance. Todd Blanche, in the best scenario for Todd Blanche, gets to be in that job maybe 2.5 more years, and then he has the rest of his life to deal with. So do the commentators. So do the politicians who tied themselves to Trump. But then came the sobering counterpoint, and this is the part that kept me up last night. Michael Feinberg, a former assistant special agent in charge at the FBI, pushed back on the idea that this is simply about popularity or political strategy. He said something that deserves to be repeated word for word. He said Donald Trump was indicted by a jury of his peers for attempting to engineer a coup to overturn a Democratic election and stay in power. That has to be the background context by which we evaluate everything. Feinberg argued that if Trump, Blanche, and others in the administration are doing things that do not make sense because there would be consequences 2.5 years from now, we should apply Occam's razor. The simplest explanation, he said, is that they do not think they are going to be out of power. He pointed to the fact that Blanche once publicly said he sees nothing wrong with armed federal agents at polling places, despite a federal statute that clearly prohibits that. These people, Feinberg said, are not acting like they are ever going to leave office. Now think about that for a moment. Let that sit with you. Because if that is true, everything changes. It means the Comey indictment is not an embarrassing mistake. It is not even primarily about revenge. It is a signal. It is a message to every critic, every journalist, every former government official, every citizen who dares to speak out. We have the power and we will use it, and we do not care if the case holds up in court because the process itself is the punishment. Liz Oyer confirmed this on a personal level. She revealed that she experienced a security incident at her home after leaving the Justice Department. She said the idea that she cannot turn to the FBI or the Justice Department for help because of the people who are in charge terrifies her. She said the institutions that are supposed to protect citizens may no longer do that because, in her words, the bad guys are on the inside now. Michael Feinberg echoed this. He said he feels quite confident the FBI would not come to his aid if needed. And yet both of them, along with Rhodes and others, emphasize that their oath to the Constitution does not come with an expiration date. So what do we do? What does this mean for you and me? Here's the clear, practical takeaway, and I want you to write this down. First, understand what is at stake. This is not about whether you like James Comey. This is about whether the government can charge you with a felony for posting a picture on social media that it decides to interpret as threatening. If this indictment stands, it would allow the government to criminalize an enormous swath of political speech. Jonathan Turley said that explicitly. He wrote that if this precedent holds, the government could prosecute a huge amount of protected speech. Second, know where the guardrails still exist. Jim Comey himself said it best when he described the independent judiciary as one remaining leg of a three-legged stool. Judges appointed by presidents of both parties still believe in the rule of law. Grand juries of ordinary citizens have already rejected flimsy cases from this Justice Department. The first Comey indictment was dismissed. Courts have pushed back on overreach. Third, participate. Political scientists who study democratic backsliding have found that once a certain threshold of citizens engage in nonviolent, visible civic action, regimes tend not to survive. Ben Rhodes pointed to the Velvet Revolutions at the end of the Cold War, to the movements that pushed back against authoritarian leaders in other democracies. State governments, secretaries of state, local officials, these all matter. The midterm elections in November are approaching, and every seat in Congress matters for restoring checks and balances. Fourth, speak up. Everyone I spoke to for this story, former FBI officials, former Justice Department attorneys, former national security advisors, they all said the same thing. The oath they took to the Constitution does not expire. The consequences of staying silent now are far worse than the consequences of speaking out. And here is the number one thing I want you to take away from this entire video, the thing I have been building toward from the very beginning. The Comey indictment is not an isolated case. It is a test. It is a test of whether Americans will accept a Justice Department that prosecutes people for posting pictures of seashells while ignoring real threats to the Republic. It is a test of whether the courts will hold. It is a test of whether citizens will pay attention. And it is a test of whether the people currently in power believe they will ever have to answer for what they are doing. Andrew McCarthy, writing in the National Review, warned that this kind of lawfare sets a precedent. He said, "Do not be surprised when the next administration responds in kind. The cycle only breaks if we break it." So here is your action plan for this week. Day 1, educate yourself. Read the actual indictment. Read Jonathan Turley's column on Fox News. Read Andrew McCarthy's piece in National Review. The links are in the description. Day 2, talk about this with someone who disagrees with you. Not to argue, but to ask, do you think a picture of seashells should be a federal crime? Day 3, check your voter registration. Make sure you are registered. Make sure your family members are registered. Day 4, find one way to participate in your community, whether that is attending a local government meeting, joining a civic organization, or simply staying informed. Day 5 through 7, keep watching, keep listening, and refuse to look away, because that is what they are counting on. If this video changed the way you think about what is happening in America right now, hit that like button. It matters more than you know. Comment below and tell me, do you think the courts will hold? Do you believe the judiciary can still protect free speech? I read every single comment, and your perspective matters to this community. If you are not subscribed yet, subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a video, because this story is far from over. The fight for free speech, for the rule of law, for the basic principles that make this country what it is, that fight is just getting started. Do not stop here. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to uncover the truth that others refuse to talk about.